The Sunday school lessons for November 30th, 2025 are Ezekiel's vision and hope floats. Ezekiel chapter 47, verses 1 through 9 and verse 12. Welcome, viewers and subscribers to my channel, Read With Me. I am Audrey. If you are new here, please know that this is an audio reading of the lesson with intermittent commentary. Please subscribe to the channel and help this channel grow one viewer and one subscriber at a time. Verse 1. The man brought me back to the entrance of the temple, and I saw water coming from under the threshold of the temple toward the east, for the temple faced east. The water was coming down from under the south side of the temple, south of the altar. The man in view, perhaps an angel, is the one who has been guiding Ezekiel's visionary temple tour from the beginning. Previously, the man had taken Ezekiel to the temple's portico and entrance. Now that they are back again at the entrance to the temple. Like Solomon's temple before it, Ezekiel envisions this temple facing east, the direction from which the sun rises. Compare with the prophet's vision of the old temple in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 16. On arrival, Ezekiel witnesses a bizarre sight: water flowing down from under the south side of the temple. We think of a threshold as the small gap between the bottom of a closed door and the floor. That flow of water is to the south side of the altar. South is to Ezekiel's right side if he is facing east, watching the water flow away from the door. Apparently, the waters are flowing in a southeasterly direction. We will see why shortly. Verses 2 through 3. Verse 2. He then brought me out through the north gate and led me around the outside to the outer gate facing east, and the water was trickling from the north side. The guide now leads the prophet outside the envisioned Jerusalem. To get to the outside of the outer gate facing east, they first head north to exit the city by the gate there. They then move clockwise until they reach their destination. We may wonder why they don't just go out the east gate rather than take a long way around. The answer is in Ezekiel chapter 44, verses 1 through 3. The Lord has closed that gate. In his new location, the prophet notes consistency in the direction the water flows. Verse 3. As the man went eastward, with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits and then led me through water that was ankle deep. The man leads Ezekiel eastward, the direction toward which the waters flow. The man has a measuring line in his hand. This may be the same measuring rod mentioned at the beginning of the vision. Walking a distance of 1,000 cubits, the two find themselves in ankle deep water. If the cubits mentioned are the standard ones of 18 inches, they have walked about 500 yards, a little short of 3/10 of a mile. If the cubit used is the 21-inch long cubit of Ezekiel chapter 43, verse 13, then the distance is 1/3 of a mile. Walking at a rate of 2 miles per hour requires 10 minutes or less to cover the distance. Verses 4 through 5. Verse 4. He measured off another 1,000 cubits and led me through waters that was knee deep. He measured off another 1,000 and led me through waters that was up to the waist. The computation of possible distances is the same as in the previous verse. Wading through the water at a rate of 1 mile per hour means it takes 17 to 20 minutes, depending on the cubit length used, to reach this segment of the visionary tour. By this point, it is surely apparent that the source of the water cannot be Jerusalem's Gihon spring or any other naturally occurring flow. And this contributes to an issue of what to expect. Some commentators believe that the imagery of Ezekiel chapters 40 through 48 depicts a literal physical temple that is yet to be rebuilt. In that case, Ezekiel is foreseeing God's plan to alter the topography, the landscape, and hydrology of Jerusalem miraculously. Other commentators believe, however, that the vision of the restored temple and its changed surroundings are figurative. This position may be supported by how Luke chapter 3, verses 4 through 6 uses the changed topography of Isaiah chapter 40, verse 4 as a metaphor for the ministry of John the Baptist. The leveling of the terrain could refer to the change of people's hearts receptively, etc. Images of a temple in Revelation chapter 11, verse 18, etc., are also interpreted as figurative, since Revelation chapter 21, verse 22 says that no temple was seen in the heavenly city of Jerusalem. Another support for this position is that although numerous dimensions are given for the restored temple and some of its furnishings and surroundings, in Ezekiel's vision, the height of the temple itself is never specified. Verses 6 through 8. Verse 6. He asked me, Son of man, do you see this? Then he led me back to the bank of the river. On the address Son of Man, see commentary on Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 10. The guide's question may be posed as an exclamation of wonder. Son of man, look at this. Isn't all this something? After an unspecified time of experiencing their amazement, Ezekiel and his guide seemingly head back to the point where they had begun, wading into the river. They are back on dry land. Verse 7. When I arrived there, I saw a great number of trees on each side of the river. The book of Ezekiel speaks of trees in about 30 verses, more than any other Bible book. About half of those 30 verses are in the prophet's vision of Ezekiel, chapters 40 through 48. The imagery of trees in this verse finds a parallel in the vision of Revelation chapter 22, verse 2, given more than 600 years later. The author of Revelation envisions the trees of Ezekiel's vision as trees of life. Verse 12 will provide the reason for this connection. Taking the book of Ezekiel as a whole, the prophet's reference is usually to ordinary trees, but the prophet also refers to the trees of Eden. Tree imagery occurs extensively in Jesus' teachings centuries after Ezekiel. The Babylonians' devastation of the land during the siege of Jerusalem included the cutting of trees for the building of siege ramps. The Israelites were constrained in the use of trees for such purposes, but the Babylonians knew no such constraint. Since Ezekiel's vision speaks to renewal of the land, that includes renewal of trees, both those that produce fruit and those that don't, as signs of recovery. Verse 8. He said to me, this water flows toward the eastern region and goes down into the Arabah, where it enters the Dead Sea. When it empties into the sea, the salty water there becomes fresh. The two-word phrase eastern region is unique in the Old Testament. The Hebrew word translated region is quite rare. In two of its four occurrences elsewhere, it designates general areas of non-Israelite habitation. In Ezekiel's vision, however, the territory must be Israelite. This is because the sea, which is the Dead Sea, is receiving water flowing from Jerusalem. The Arabah region that intervenes is Israelite territory. The city of Jerusalem lies at almost exactly the same latitude as the northernmost tip of the Dead Sea. Therefore, the waters flowing from Jerusalem's temple toward this sea have to flow a bit to the south as well as east in order uh, to go into the sea rather than end up connecting with the Jordan River. The Dead Sea is several times saltier than the oceans. The vast majority of aquatic creatures cannot survive in an environment such as that of the Dead Sea. In Ezekiel's vision, however, the waters become fresh, allowing life to flourish not only in the water, but all around its banks. The sea that symbolizes sterility and death comes to symbolize vibrant life. Picking up on the image of water flowing from Jerusalem is Zechariah chapter 14, verse 8. That passage foresees living waters flowing not only toward the Dead Sea, but also westward into the Mediterranean Sea. Verse 9. Swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows. There will be large numbers of fish because this water flows there and makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. A consequence of the healing that occurs wherever the river flows is that marine life is able to exist and flourish where it previously could not, especially in the once dead sea. We could say that the river of life has created the sea of life. Fish, which could not have survived in the overly salty waters of the Dead Sea, are now described as being large numbers. Fresh water will yield abundant life in the formerly brackish water and on the land that is near the water. Verse 12. Fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail. Every month they will bear fruit, because of the water from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for healing. Ezekiel's tour guide now returns to describing the trees seen earlier in the vision. That their produce will not wither speaks to the fact that the fruit will not be susceptible to disease or anything else that would make it inedible. The prediction that every month each tree will bear fruit means that these trees will bear fruit every month, quite unlike ordinary trees with their dormant cycles because of the effect of the waters flowing from the sanctuary. The leaves of the trees have life giving properties just as the waters do. All this reminds us of the presence of the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. Only here there are numerous trees of life. There is much here that is also reflected in Revelation chapter 22, verses 1 through 2, verse 14, and verse 19. Like Ezekiel, John points toward a world made Eden like, fit for the redeemed as their new home. Both use the imagery of a perfect place that is connected with a restored and perfected relationship between God and his faithful people. Revelation chapter 22, verses 1 through 2 also says that the tree of life will provide fruit for God's people, and its leaves will bring healing. In a figurative sense, the prophet Ezekiel sometimes sees trees as valuable symbols of the return to wholeness that awaits God's people. An example is the extended vision of renewal in Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 11 through 31. There, the revival of forests, fields, and pastures accompanies the end of the Babylonian domination of the land of Israel and the return of the people to their homeland. In part, this was because invading Assyrian and Babylonian armies systematically and deliberately felled trees in order to oppress the local population they attacked. The fruitful nature of the trees reflects God's pleasure to provide for the repentant and faithful. The fruit does not run out before the next crop comes along, so abundant is it. Ezekiel attributes this great abundance of the stream flowing from the sanctuary. The temple becomes a symbol of God's great generosity. Thanks for listening.